question. Look, the past is important. Dr. Omar many years ago gave a talk called "Qifu haythu waqafu thumma amdu." Stop where they stopped and then continue. Like, you have to know, it's important to know the past. I mean, history is a very important study. It's a study that's ignored. They say, Santayana, the great philosopher, said, those who don't learn the lessons of history are condemned to repeat them, right? And somebody added to that, and those who do learn the lessons of history are condemned to watch those who don't repeat them. So it's definitely a problem, not knowing history. It's very important. We should know what happened in Bosnia. We should know what happened, because that can happen again. We should know what happened in the Holocaust. We should know what happened with the Armenians. These are very complicated and painful issues, but they're important to know. But we should not make them the sources of a continued hatred that never ends. And I'll give you an example. Our Prophet ﷺ, when he came to Medina, they had a day called Yom Bu'ath. And it was a day where the Aus and the Khazraj, two tribes in Medina from Kahlan, they used to fight each other, even though they were cousins. And they actually originally wanted to bring the Prophet to be a peacemaker, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which shows that at the essence of his message was bringing peace to communities. So he came as a peacemaker. But on the day of the Bu'ath, they went out and the Aus quoted their poetry and the Khazraj quoted their poetry. And it they reminded that animosity, and they started fighting one another. And so the Prophet came out and he told them to stop. And then he prohibited them from celebrating that day. And so it's very important that we don't turn these calamities of the past into this kind of constant memorialization. This is something in America that it's very tragic about certain things that have happened in the past that were very horrific. But the Quran says, تِلْكَ الْأُمَمْ قَدْ خَلَتْ لَهَا مَا كَسَبَتْ وَلَكُمْ مَا كَسَبْتُمْ. Those people are gone. They have what they earned, and you have what you earned. We can't dwell on what the British did a long time ago. They're not the same people today. Those were different people. We can't dwell on what the Japanese did when they occupied. Those people are dead. And these people have no blame. لَا تَزِرُ وَازِرَةٌ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى. No soul bears the burden of any other soul. So you can't blame present people for the sins of the past. It's very important for us to remember that. So we have to know the past. It's important. And we should learn the lessons of the past. But we also have to recognize that while there's much pain in the past, there are great areas of incredible inspiration from the past. And I'll just give you, one example of that. The Muslims, the Jews, and the Christians, there are periods when they did live together. It wasn't perfect. It never is. But there are times when they did live together, which means if they could live together in the past with all the baggage of the mentalities of the past, how can we not do the same thing today when we've been freed from so much of that baggage? My civilization was a very, very arrogant civilization. And in some ways, we still have some arrogance. I don't deny that. But there are many people in my country that they're reconstructed. They're different people. They're not the people of America of the 1950s or 40s that hated Jews, that hated blacks, that hated Mexicans, that had derogatory names for them. When I was a very young person, there were still many names that I no longer hear anymore, like Wop and Spick and Mick. They used to call Irish people Micks. It was a derogatory term. I don't hear those type of words anymore. And if they're said in private because people don't accept them in public anymore. These are things that we have to honor, that we have to celebrate how far we've come and not constantly remind ourselves of how far we have to go. If we always are complaining about how bad it is today, then how do we encourage people to change? If it's all about grievances, How do we encourage people? And finally, collectivism is a disease. Don't collectivize people. Our Prophet ﷺ never collectivized a group. He looked at individuals as individuals. People should be judged not by the color of their skin or what group they belong to, but by the content of the character that they embody. And so when you see Muslims in Singapore, don't lump them all together as a group. There are good Muslims in Singapore and there are bad Muslims. There are Muslims that are principled and practicing their faith, and then there are some that aren't. There are good Chinese Singaporeans, and then there are the bad ones. Every people has this. But don't lump them all together. Judge people as individuals. And this is our way. This collective judgment on whole peoples is so unjust to do that. So it's really important that we look at each other as individuals and let that individual reveal himself to you through his character. If you want to change the negative attitudes, stop complaining about attitudes and start being good, decent people. Really. Start being good, decent people. Serve your society. Volunteer. Do things. And not simply for pragmatic reasons of public relations. Public relations used to be called propaganda. It was a great propagandist named Bernays. Right? Edward Bernays. He changed the name from propaganda because the Nazis gave it a bad name. And the Catholic Church used to call their missionary work propaganda. So it used to have a positive term. It doesn't anymore. PR is propaganda. Do things because it's the right thing to do, not because you want to get some kind of public relations boost from it.